we'll do a review in Lekutei Sichos in Chelek Tezvov. This is the fourth Sicha for the Parshas Vayeshev and Chanukah. In this Sicha, the Rebbe discusses the absolute necessity that one needs to learn Torah with bittul, with humility and subjugation, and recognition that this is Torah's Hashem. Otherwise, as the Chazal say, "Haboy reik ein boy mayim." If it doesn't have the aspect of water, which represents the level of bittul, then becomes nechoshim va'akrabim yesh boy. The Rebbe also associates this with Chanukah, as we know that Chanukah represents the Greeks wanting the Yidden to light the menorah not with shemen toher. The shemen toher means they agreed to Torah logical, but Torah secho, the level of bittul that you need for the Noisan HaTorah, they objected to that, and that is the lesson, how important it is in order to really come up in the right way, learning Torah the right way, that there has to be the level of bittul. Let's go step by step. First, the Rebbe explains this Sikha. Aleph. So first the Rebbe brings down, and the Gemara seems to bring down two unrelated matters. The Gemara talks about Chanukah, and then the Gemara brings down the drasha now on the pasuk in our parsha, and it seems just that the name, the author is the same name, so that's why they follow, but there has to be a content, and the Rebbe explains the connection between Chanukah and the pasuk in the parsha. So in a pirush from pasuk v'haboy reik ein boy moy. So how to explain the explanation of the verse? The pit is empty and there is no water. So the obvious question is, if it's empty, it means there's no water. Gefindman in Gemara in the sugya for Chanukah, we find in the Gemara in the part of in the Gemara in Shabbos where there is the whole discussion about Chanukah. So it says V'Omar Rav Kana. So Rav Kana further said that Dora Shel Nosen Bar Manyumi Mishmei de Rabbi Tanchum, that Rab Nosen Bar Manyumi expounded in the name of Rabbi Tanchum, Mai Diksi V'Aboy Reikein B'Mayim. What is the meaning of this pasuk? What does it say? The pit is empty, there's no water. Mimash Masha Nemar. Already it's understood when the pasuk says that the pit is empty. Any day shein b'mayim, don't I already know there is no water there? What does it say? I have to say ein b'mayim. Elamat Talmud lemer ein b'mayim. So what does it have to tell you there is no water? But this is coming to tell you ein b'mayim, mayim ein b'y. There's, when we say empty, we mean it's empty if there's no water there. Avol nechoshim v'akrabim yesh b'y. But there is snakes and scorpions is in the pit. That's the way it explains the Gemara. Now, bepashtus, the simply is those was the Gemara bring the drasha. The reason that the Gemara brings this expounding view of Rab Nosson bar Menyumi in the sugya from Chanukah on the pasuk in the discussion of Chanukah, the Gemara, der far, weil die Drosche is gesagt geworden von selben Mann der Omar. The reason is because this Drosche, was said by the same author, by the same Mann der Omar. Was hat gesagt the Friedrich Drosche. He is the one that said the previous Drosche, so the Gemara brings one thing that he said and another thing that he said. Omar Rav Kahana first, before it says Rav Kahana says, Dora Sham Nosen Bar Menyumi Mishmei de Rabbi Tanchum. That Rav Nosen Bar Menyumi, the name of Rabbi Tanchum, expounded that Ner Shel Chanukah Chulu, the light of Chanukah, etc. The Gemara goes through the discussion about Chanukah. That same Manda Omar Rav Kahana, Dora Sham Nosen Bar Mishmei de Rabbi Tanchum, said another drasha. So the connection is just because it's the same person, the same Manda Omar, the same author of both of these statements. Aber We get showing feel more, but we already spoken many times. Is yeder inyan in Torah b'tachlis hadiyah. Every aspect in Torah is total, precise. It's totally exact. And therefore, when the Gemara brings Adrashi in a gewisser sugya, when the Gemara brings an expounding thought in a certain discussion of a Gemara, it's not just because of a side matter. There's like you have here, the same author. Nor derfar, but rather because the drosha hat atoichen dike shayches to der sugya. Because that drosha that is brought by the second in this discussion has a connection in its content to the discussion of the Gemara in which it's brought down. So the fun is verstandig binyoneinu. From this we understand in our matter. As I says, in Teuchen, that there is a connection in content sufficient the Meimre Hanal mit Ninyan for Chanukah, between the statement of above, between the statement of Aboy Reik Ein Boy Moyim, that the Drosha brought down, with the idea from Chanukah. And the Rebbe says, on the top of that, this is a posik in the portion of Vayeshev, and the Shalosh says that the Parshas Vayeshev has a shaykhus to Chanukah. Vayeshev, Miketz and Vayigash, because the Yom Tov comes out during those Parshas. So therefore, and that's a pasuk there. So that already that Parsha has a shaykhus in which the pasuks bring down. But right, like them, was the Shalosh right in Onik from unser Parsha, especially according to what the Shalosh writes in the beginning of our portion. As the Parsha is Vayeshev, Miketz, Vayigash, Hod Mashaychus to Chanukah. It says that the portion Vayeshev, Miketz, Vayigash have a connection to Chanukah. And their pasuk, V'aboy Reik Ein B'mayim, this pasuk, V'aboy Reik Ein B'mayim, Shalom always says that the Yom Tov in which the Yom Tov comes out has a connection to the Parsha of the week we read that. And since the Chanukah is always comes out during these three Parshas, Vayeshev, Miketz, Vayigash, therefore is a korban. So this pasuk, V'aboy Reik Ein B'mayim, Shtevach in Parshas Vayeshev, is written in our Parsha in the portion of Vayeshev. So that means that there is a connection to the Chanukah. The Rebbe will explain later on that the connection to the Chanukah is that they both represent that Torah has to be with the level of bittul, and that was also, which means to accept the higher level in Torah. That's more than just the logic. And therefore, that's the idea. What the Greeks were against were not against the logic of Torah so much as they were against the actual holiness of Torah, of the Torah Hashem, which requires a level of bittul, as the Rebbe will explain Barichas in the Sikha base. So first, the Rebbe says that the idea that there is no water, that water is also in the inner meaning of things. Water is Torah. And when we say that the Boirei came by Mayim, it's also understood that there was no Torah over there. And the Rebbe is going to ask, how so? The reason that the brothers wanted to kill Yosef, they thought, according to Halacha, that he deserves the death penalty, being a Reida, being that he's causing all these problems for the family, for the brothers. And so why are we saying Ein B'Mayim is not a Torah? And the Rebbe explains it doesn't have the Mayim of Torah, doesn't have the Bittul. Let's look aside. Base. Chazal Zog, in our sages of blessed memory, say Ein Mayim Ela Torah, that water is always Torah. So whenever we talk about water, it also hints to Torah. The food is move on. So from this it's understood as in Torah. So when a state Mayim in Torah, when it states Mayim, is a Zoich Maramas of Torah. That is also a hint for Torah. And the Rebbe says in our Pasuk, B'frat in a Pasuk, V'aboy Reik Ein B'Mayim, especially we're trying to discuss now the Ein B'Mayim, that Mayim is referring to Torah. Over here specifically, we see that the Mayim here is associated with Torah based on the Medrash. Is Mefurish b'Medrash. The Medrash says very clearly, Ador Etzich Vegen Torah, that here what we're talking about is Torah. And because the Medrash says, Boy Reik, the pit was empty, so metaphorically speaking, what pit we're talking about? Nisroiking Boy Shel Yaakov. The pit of Yaakov, Yaakov's pit, in other words, the thing that holds Yaakov, was empty. Ein Boy Mayim. There's no Mayim. Ein Boy Divrei Torah Shem Nimshulu L'Mayim. There is no words of Torah which have been equated to water. And in the Boyer of Yaakov, there's no Torah. That's the hint. That's the meaning of the pasuk here of Haboyer came by Mayim, that the Boyer of Yaakov has no water in it, has no Torah in it. Cool. Und das ist euch der Pirush HaPnimi in the Maimer Chazal. This would also be the inner explanation in the saying of the sages. Why does it say there's no water, but there is snakes and scorpions? Mayim ein boy, aval nechoshim v'akrabim yesh boy. While there is no water, but there is snakes and scorpions. We want to say over here that as soon as you're lacking the level of Mayim, you're lacking the level of Torah, you gotta deal with Nechoshim and Akrab with a lot of negativity. So the explanation is Mayim aval Nechoshim Akrab yesh boy. And so, as before the Rebbe explained, that the Rebbe just brings down these two drushes are brought next to each other. This idea that Mayim represents Torah, Nechoshim Akram Einboy is together. Befrat, as the Medrash bring Beide Pirushim. The Medrash brings both commentaries. Aleph, the commentary we're just talking about, that Mayim Einboy Avol Nechoshim Akram Yeshboy, that we talked about in the beginning. The Sikha starts with the Medrash over there, but he also brings on Beis Einboy Mayim Einboy Divrei Torah. He also says that the drasha that Nisroikin Beirei Shel Yaakov, that Ein Bei Divrei Torah. B'Hamshach Zeh Lozeh. So that means that once we say that there's no Torah, that means there comes the Choshev V'Akrab. Why? What does it mean? So B'Shas Mi'iz in Hamatzah when Ein Bei Divrei Torah. When you are in a situation that there's no Divrei Torah, Ein Bei Mayim, so then automatically you have to deal, there is snakes and the scorpions are in there. There's nothing in between, which means you can't have no Torah but not Nechoshim. If there is no Mayim, you're going to get Nechoshim v'Akrab. There's no middle way, just not having Torah but not also having Nechoshim v'Akrab. If there is no Torah, then there is the Nechoshim v'Akrab. There's no intermediate, no thing between. This haste. As the chesarim von ein bei divrei Torah, that when you're lacking, and when we're saying there's no divrei Torah, is need norva said is post from Torah. Not only that you're empty of Torah, uner ken bleiben full mit yoner reshus. Maybe you can still be full with optional matters in yoner reshus. It doesn't have to be negativity. You know Torah, but no, that's not possible. Not in sein boir, but in his pit, automatically it'll be snakes and scorpions. There will be matters that are opposite and opposed to Kedusha. If you don't have the positive, you're going to have to deal with the negative. There's no parav in between. If you don't have the positive, there's no filling with just stamazeh, but it'll be with paravis, with the optional stuff, but it'll be with Nechoshim Akrab. Aderech Pirush HaBaal Shem Tov, from Pasuk, this is similar to the Baal Shem Tov's interpretation of the verse. The Pasuk says, V'sartem v'avadetem. It seems like, and you turn away from Hashem, and then you will worship other gods. Why does it have to be, you turn away from Hashem, but maybe then you'll do other things, not worship other gods, but the Baal Shem Tov teaches the pasuk v'sartem b'avadetem. Kasher ha'odom mafrides asmei Hashem yizborech. When a person separates himself from the blessed Hashem, so then immediately he will be worshiping Avodah Zarah. So besartem is v'avadetem. Below yesh davar memutza, there is nothing in between. There's no in between. So now the Rebbe says that's why the Torah doesn't befeirish. Why does the Torah hint, instead of saying mayim ein boy reik ein mayim, the pasuk could have l'cheira said haboy reik molei b'nechashim v'akrabim, and it's filled. Why is it b'nechashim? Because the Torah wants to tell you, not that it was, to tell you that as soon as you don't have mayim in there, already you have the nechashim v'akrabim. That mit is mevuar. With this we explain Havos Torah zoknish befeirish as nechashim v'akrabim yezbay. Why does Torah not say specifically articulate that there is snakes and scorpion in that pit? Normally us up, but we learn it at Titzod. It's a result from ein b'mayim. There's no mayim, and therefore there is nechashim. This is something that you need not specify. I went and I explained it that Torah could have said that befeirish, but the Rebbe is not specifically emphasizing that point. But the Rebbe says you don't have to detail. It's not necessary to tell us nechashim v'akrabim yesh boy, because is b'derech memela atitzov v'mayim ein boy. It is a result that there is no water, and therefore there will be nechashim akrab. The far bring their medrash the zwei pirush min hemshach, and that's why the medrash brings these two interpretations. That mayim means Torah, and when the Torah doesn't have mayim, it's going to be nechashim akrab. He brings it in one flow. Ein pirush is totally in musbar from zweit pirush, because one interpretation hinges on and is explained from the second one. Those was nechashim v'akrabim yesh boy. The reason why there is snakes and scorpion hotzur genumen b'derech memela von ein b'mayim ein b'divrei Torah. That comes automatically when we say ein b'mayim. Means there's no divrei Torah, and therefore automatically we understand why nechashim akrabim yeshba. And for that reason, that's why it led, because the bird was no mayim and a negativity. So they ended up doing against the Torah, which is from mechiras Yosef to selling Yosef. But the Rebbe asks in Ois Gimel, he says, but the brothers, in their view, didn't go against the Torah. They thought that he deserves the Torah. And Mela, when we say you turn away from Hashem, it's like worshiping Avodah Zarah, because we understand, because that's turning away from Hashem. But here we're talking specific. There's no Torah. Why would not Torah bring the nechashim ve'akrabim? Why do we say that? Then we'll explain that within Torah itself, it's the one level of bittul. And the Rebbe explains even the level of bittul of Torah is something which is necessary. Let's look inside. Absolute necessity for the study of Torah is the level of bittul. Gimel. It would seem that we can ask, we can understand, we'll grant you the Baal Shem Tov's interpretation of the Sartem Ba'avadetem, that you'll turn away and then you will worship. That discusses the essence of the connection and the cleaving of a Yid with Hashem. Is moving, it's understood as vi nor v'sartem mekertzach and the dveikis mit Neibishten, that you turn away from your connection with Hashem, is a shoyin an inyan von heipach bavadetem. So immediately that becomes a matter If you turn away, then it's vavarita. Miyad hu oived avodah zorah. So immediately you worship avodah zorah. Akopon avodah zorah bedakus doesn't mean literal avodah zorah, at least in a refined way, worshiping avodah zorah. So we understand that because you're moving from a connection to Hashem, which is a very general aspect, to move away from Hashem. Then you become a worshiper of idols, at least bedakas. Oh, but in our case, here we're talking about, okay, there's lacking Torah. My Torah is farvos der hechrech as vibal das bals is nitokin Torah. Why do we have to say that since there is no Torah, muz b'derech memela verna metzius for nechoshim ba'akrabim? Automatically, there has to become an entity of snakes and scorpion, amenagit to Torah, an opponent to Torah. Why is it necessary? Why is it a natural result of not having Torah that this should create nechoshim ba'akrabim, opponents to Torah? In addition, the Rebbe asked, the brothers of Yosef thought they were doing up in Torah. So why are we saying they're not doing Torah? Also, you need to understand, since Yedua, it's known as the Achi Yosef haben gehalten, that Yosef's brother were of the opinion, as Al Pidin is Yosef Mechuyev Misa, that according to the law, Yosef is guilty of death. Onemendik, as Yosef is Anoichel Misnakesh Ben Avsham Lahamisom, that Yosef was somebody who was plotting, and he was trying to kill them. And Snakish Ben Avsham Lahamisom, and he thought that he was trying to kill them. And therefore, he has the status, the law of somebody who's chasing you to kill you. Or there's other reasons that they had why Yosef deserved the death penalty. This is Mavur and Mefarshat Torah, as articulated in the commentaries of the Torah. Hein Farvos zog der Medrash. So why is the Medrash say Adur them was gewollt harigen in Yosef from the fact they wanted to kill Yosef and is nisreiken by Rishel Yaakov and by the Torah. That Yaakov's pit was empty. There's no Torah. Was the funis mashma from that? It appears. It seems like as the Shvatim haben sich has visholem, that the tribes, God forbid, nit gerechet mit divrei Torah. They didn't consider. They didn't go by what the Torah wants. Based on daitom, he says given up in Torah. According at the time, it was according to the Torah. Maybe they made a mistake, but they thought that this was the Torah. So how come? The Rebbe asks, we're saying that it's his pit was empty. And what's such a terrible thing about Torah when there's no Torah that we say? It's like the word v'abadatem over there, you turn away from Hashem. Here is just not Torah. Why does it have to be an opponent to Torah just because there is no water, there's no Torah? There's going to be a menaget to Torah. And now the Rebbe brings out that we equate Torah to several different things. The aspect of Mayim of Torah represents the bittul of Torah. So we're talking about specifically out the bittul of Torah, and the Rebbe will explain how the lack of bittul of Torah is by inherently going to lead to nechoshim v'akrabim. Dalet. Vet men dos verstehen, so we'll understand it. Behagdim dem tam. By first introducing the reason was Chazal vergleichen Torah zu Mayim, why our sages of blessed memory equated the Torah to Mayim. We know Torah could be compared to a lot of things. There's a specific, unique characteristic of Torah which is equated to Mayim. It's equated to other things. Torah is zugeglichen lekama dvorim. Torah has been equated to many things: the lechem, the yayin, the shemen, bread, wine, oil, bechul, etc. Was jeder von sie is metair and ander geder v'tchuna in Torah. Each one of these comparison describes another definition, another characteristic in Torah. what's water? What is the definition of water that we equated to Torah? Wegen dem Inyan von Mayim in Torah. What is the idea of Mayim of Torah? Zog Chazal, our sages of blessed memory tell us. Lama nimshlu divrei Torah l'mayim. Why are the words of Torah been equated to water? Loimer loch, to tell you, just as water leave the higher place and they go to a lower place, av divrei Torah, also the words of Torah, ein miskaimin, they are not sustained, ella b'mi shadaitu shefela, only whose mind is humble. If you have humility, then namuch, you're in low place, then Torah exists. That's why it was equated to water. Thus haste, which really we're saying here, water represents the aspect of humility of Torah. As mayim is nit a dugma of etzem inyan haTorah. Mayim isn't a example of what Torah's essence is. It's a specific act, a specific aspect. Not of them bittul v'shifnus ha'odam, but rather this represents the humility and the low. They consider themselves humble, and the humility of the person was fodert sich beim Lernen Torah, which is necessary, which is a requirement when you learn Torah. So now we're talking about not just learning Torah, we're talking about when you don't have mayim, means you don't have that humility that Torah requires. Like them is for entfer was der Medrash anal zogt. By this we answered what the Medrash says, Nisreikin Boire Shel Yaakov, that the pit of Yaakov was empty, ain't by divrei Torah. Now when it says there's no Torah, but by Zay is given Torah, Medine HaTorah, by them there was Torah, Din HaTorah. The Rebbe asked before, but they were trying to do up Torah according to their view. But the issue here is not that there was no Torah there. As what not gefällt, what was lacking here, the Inyan Hamayim Shebe Torah. It was the humility, the water of Torah. V'haboy reik ein boy mayim. The pit, the Torah was empty without water, without bittul. Because the common simches, as the Rebbe will explain later on in simches, the bittul. Now it doesn't mean that they lack totally bittul. They lack bittul according to what's expected from the brothers of Vayeshev. Just like we find in the davening, normally a person bows, and he gets up. You bow down and you get Baruch Atah Hashem. So you kneel and you get up, and then you continue. But the king, the Gemara brings down, is Kivan Shekora Shuvei Nezekef. Once he kneels, which means the requirement of bittul of a melech is more. Person greater needs to have more bittul than an ordinary person. So therefore, according to the level of the brothers of Yosef, they didn't have that level bittul and zay according to their milah, their bittul berach goyel balosam. That subjugation relative to how great their standing and their advantage, their step where they were, can move on. As we understand from the kriyas ubitl bad goshen, the kneeling, and that is emphasized the level of humility. You bow down in tfilas ha'amida, in the prayer of the Amida, as they say there is that the order is krireya bebaruch bezaikev b'shem. Normally, by ordinary people, you kneel when you say baruch, but when you say baruch atah Hashem, you stand up, you are upright again. But the king, once he has kneeled, he doesn't get up anymore. Basically, meaning he requires a more intense level of bittul. So that means, according to the level, there is a greater level of bittul. So now we are saying that it's not even that they didn't have the water, which they didn't have Torah. But it's only they didn't have the bittul of Torah. So the question that we're asking before, why would just not having, now we're not even saying that they were lacking Torah. We're saying that they were lacking the bittul of Torah. Why would that bring about the nechoshim v'akrabim? According to this, it's even stronger, the above mentioned question. How come? As if there is no water, is automatically there is snakes and scorpions. Is it just because of this alone? Was beim Limud felt blois der Mittel beschiflos. When he's studying, but he's lacking that humility and that self-effacement, bittel. So by him werden the mitzias, that's what he should have. The existence from the choshim v'akrabim, from the snakes and scorpions, amenakit zum inyan haTorah, an opponent to the idea of Torah. Why is that? Hey, the Rebbe explains that Torah is essentially Hashem's wisdom, which is a level of beyond bleak wool, and the person is a very limited with his mind. In order for a yid to be able to take Torah, there needs to be the humility, because he is not taking something that is be'erach to him, but he's taking something which is beyond. Hey, the beauty in them, the explanation in this, that Iker fun Torah is, the main part of Torah is as durch dem limud verbindet man sich mit neisen haTorah, that through the study we tie yourself to the giving to the Torah. There's no reason we have to connect ourselves to the one that gives the Torah. Und der Riber is der Inyan from Bittul B'Shiflus Atnai Ikri. And that's why the idea of subjugation and humility, that is a essential condition. It's a main condition that in order to connect with the Eibishter through Torah, with the Neisen HaTorah, you must have that humility. As long as the person is an entity for himself, is noch mugder in the Hagbolas from Anivra. He is still defined, and he is under the limitations of a created being. Und der Vater is nicht mesugel zu verbinden sich, and that's why he is not capable for him to tie himself with the one that gives the Torah, which is bleak wool, which is unlimited. Davke durch dem was der Leumet steht in Atnua from Bittel Betachlis. It is only through this that this one who studies is standing in such a movement of total self-effacement. Bittel Betachlis was der mit geht der Arois von seine Gedorim und Hagbolas. That way he exits, he goes out of his own boundaries, in his own limitations. That's the way he can tie himself with the limitless, no boundaries of the one who the Eibishter gave the Torah. And this also, Rebbe explains the prayer that we say every time in the end of the Amidah, that we ask Hashem that we should be nafshi ka'ofer, we should be like dust, humility, and then Hashem psach libi b'seiresecha will open up our hearts to the Torah. The one can ask, Torah has to be studied with logic. Why is it a prerequisite in order for a person to psach libi b'seiresecha? He has to be nafshi ka'ofer lakol tia. And herein lays the key, because Torah, you're connecting with the Eibishter, which is Bligvul, which you cannot reach and connect with Bligvul, with Neisen HaTorah, if you stay in the Metzias. It's only to Nafshi Ka'ofer through Bittel that makes you a Keli. The mit wird euch verstandig. With this, it's also understood the Hemshech in their Bakosha, the continuation in the request. It says, V'nafshi, let my soul be like dust for everyone, and then you say, open my heart to your Torah. L'chayre, it would seem, limud Torah, when we talk about studying Torah, which is psach libi b'seira secha, open my heart to your Torah. Musdach zayin mit hakoch ba'avona v'asog, it needs to be with fervor and with understanding and grasping. When does it apply? When could you have that fervor, that koch, and understanding? When their seichel, when your intellect, and in generally, when your powers, your standing, your abilities are in entity, you appreciate with them. And here we're telling you, let my soul be dust. Humility is that negates and that nullifies his existence. Telling you are nobody. You're lakoil offer lakoil tiya. When he needs to be a somebody in order to understand the Torah, that's the way to appreciate the Torah, because he has his intellect and understanding and his chaychus. Being humility seems to be in contradiction to be able to passionately be understanding and learning and understanding in Torah. But now we understand, because it has to be with the nois and HaTorah. When could you open your heart to the Eibishter's Torah, Torah Shalach, Hashem's Torah? When can zayin akli to Torah Shalach Kodesh Baruch Hu? When could he be a vessel to Hashem's Torah? But he's built in Mugbelis, which is non-limited. Only when you have previously that subjugation that you're totally from anything, all. We're not talking about just humility, not offer like dust to everybody. A totally humility. All of everybody. What's sand? You're like sand means like everybody steps over it. Durch dem bittel, through this self-negation, you become fit to receive the Torah of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Und dennoch kommt your Geiter. First, then you put in the effort, the effort of the person with the power of his seichel. First, you have the subjugation. Then, when you work with your brain and you put an effort in, then you take Hashem's Torah and Duruch Zayne Koiches Apnimi. Then you take it through the inner koiches that you have. Psach libi, my heart open up. It's the heart already, because after the introduction of that lafshik offer la koiltia, that total humility, then you have the ability to really open up in the Torah. And the Rebbe explains that now we also understand that there is a importance to speak Torah, but it seems like learning Torah is logically. Why is it so important to speak the words of Torah? And it says that studying Torah, if you just say words without understanding, mostly you're not yaitz in the midst of Torah Shabbat Peh. But because we want, that represents the level of bittul. But the mitvet manok verstehen advar tabua. With this, we can also understand something surprising, a surprising matter. Was begin by limud Torah, which we find by the study of Torah. B'hainu. And that is, as in Dibur von Torah is do ha'mayla legabe havonas haTorah. That speaking Torah, there is an advantage relative to understanding Torah. Surprising, because seemingly understanding Torah should be the higher level. The din is, the halacha is, hamaharer b'divrei Torah in tzorech levarech. If a person is thinking about the word of Torah, you don't have to make a bracha, the birchas HaTorah, and the blessings for the Torah. While hirur lav kedibur domi, when you're thinking, it's not like speech. Kol ma sheloimed bihirur levad, ve'efshel lelohitzi b'svosov, anything that he can learn, anything that he learns just by thinking about it, and he has the ability, he can actually express it verbally, and he doesn't express it, he's just in his mind. So with that study, he does not fulfill the obligation of the mitzvah that you shall learn them, that you need to verbalize it. That's from Hilchos Talmud Torah, from the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch. Nochmer, furthermore, the Havana von Torah is verbunden mit Dibur von Torah. We say not only would you not fulfill your obligation of Torah, but to really understand Torah, you have to express it. It's connected to the level of speech of Torah. The Chazal Zogonai from Pasuk, as our sages of blessed memory say in the words, Chaim Heim lemotzeihem, they are life for motzeihem, those who found them. So the Gemara Daikal motzeihem, those who express it verbally. Al tikra lemotzeihem elo lemotzeihem. Don't say they found them that find the Torah, but the ones who express the Torah bepeh. Expressing Torah, that helps with Chaim to really connect to the Torah. And further it says, and then if it is sort of arranged, further, not just in your mouth, no, but if it's arranged in all your 248 limbs, Mishtameres, then it will be guarded, the Torah that you learn. But if you don't have it penetrate and involved and arranged, that all your limbs are Mishtameres, it won't be guarded. So you see, in order to guard Torah, you need to bring it down in Dibur and also in your whole Lamachevor. Well, why is that? Surprising. The L'cheira would seem Shas ein red divrei Torah von Torah Shabbat Peh versteht nicht was sagt. If one should speak words of the oral Torah and doesn't understand it, just say words without understanding, is the Psak Din in Shulchan Aruch. So then the ruling in the Shulchan Aruch is as ein nechshav limud klal, that is not considered study at all, just saying words. Does haste, which means as the inyan halimud by Torah Shabbal Peh, when we're studying what is considered study, when we talk about the oral Torah, Pashteit in Farstein, those was meleven. It consists, you have to understand. Psukim, Tilim, Torah Shabiksav, you can just say. But oral Torah, you have to, it consists of understanding what you learn. Hein Farvos, so in that case, why is it that Vaya Zoyne Geya that Dibur in Torah? So why is it so important, the speech in Torah? Unat Kidei Kach, to the extent that it's so important. As Eidos felt, if you're lacking that speech or arranged in all of your 248 limbs, is like Daiva Saint Tzarich Livarich. It's not enough that you don't need to make a bracha if you're just talking about it, just thinking about it without speaking. You're not fulfilling the mitzvah of you should study them. We're telling you that it's not going to be kept, it's not going to be sustained. Even the understanding of Torah will not be guarded by him. He'll lose that also. Why is that? That if it doesn't manifest itself in speech, that his understanding of Torah will get lost. This is explained with the fact that we said before, that Torah is bligvul, comes from Hashem's bligvul. You're connecting to Torah. if you're not going to have the level of bittul, the blik gvul cannot be sustained in a gvul, in a person, without the level of bittul. Zayit is the asbari in them, the explanation is like we said before, that iker von Torah, the main aspect of Torah, is der Verbund, was mahot Torah mit neusna Torah. That's the connection that we have through Torah with the one that gave the Torah, with Hashem. Und der Far muss euch der Limud HaTorah sein in Anoifen. That's why the study of Torah must be in such a way as the Havona v'Hasoga von im Inyan, that the understanding and the grasping of the idea is nit v'es is mitzad geder ha'seichel von hanivra. It's not as it is from the definition of the intellect of a created being. So if you study Torah, it has to be as it is from the perspective of Hashem. Hashem's Torah, that's the way to approach it, that's the way to get it. The fun is moving. So from this it's understood. As is nicht maspig nur from bittul, that it is not sufficient to have that sense, that movement of subjugation blows only as an introduction, as a hagdama to limud haTorah, only as a introduction to the study of Torah. That was not sufficient. You need to have it throughout the study of Torah. Nor der lernen allein. When you study, muzainin and eifin von bittul needs to be in such a manner of subjugation. Und der Riber muss der limud zainin eifin von lemoitzi ehem befeh. The study needs to be in a way that you express it with your mouth. Bis arucha beramach eivorim needs to be arranged and penetrated in all the 248 limbs. Because you are learning blik gvul, you're connecting with blik gvul. When a yid studies Torah just with his intellectual power, the hexta maila from the mention, which is the greatest advantage of the person, is his intellect. Leiter noch in sein Metzias, he still remains in his existence als Mensch. He remains human und kann nicht keilet sein. He is not able to absorb the teaching of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Rebbe says it's a foratory, it's a Kal V'Chomer. The Gemara says that there's such absurd things that a person doesn't even think at nighttime, that you can't have elephant going through the hole of the eye, the hole of the needle. Meaning a big thing cannot go through, does not fit in a small thing. We're talking about a physical animal which is big cannot get into a physical eye needle which is small. And when we talk about the Eibishter, how much more so the Eibishter, who is infinite, to fit into the Nivra Segel. From a elephant that goes into the hole of the needle. We see that even an elephant, that even though he's limited, and yet, the eye of the needle is smaller than the elephant, is in ganzen abgefreckt. It's totally impossible. We don't even dream about it. As in the kupa de machta, that he should be able to enter into the hole of the needle. Biz as to the extent it's so absurd that one cannot even see this in a dream. While in a dream, a person does have absurd things match up, which don't match up in real life. But such an absurd, such an extreme doesn't happen, the Gemara says. So how much more so as Torah was is verbunden mit HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Torah which is tied, connected to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Shashuei HaMelech Ba'atzmusei. Those are the play instruments that the king in his essence, the Eibishter himself, the Blig Bul Ha'amiti, the real, true, unlimited, no limitations. That's his Torah. Certainly you can't put it in the nitfas that to be werden in them seichel von an odom modu de mugbal, in the intellect from a person who is measured and limited. That's why it cannot be guarded. If they cannot hoben kin kiyum by him, it cannot last, it cannot be sustained. As he remains in his limitations. The Gemara the Gemara relates over there in the Gemara Nerevin that as Talmid Echot Shoyna Belachash Shokach Talmud, there was one student that who would learn softly. He forgot, he didn't express it loudly. As opposed to when you connect, you tie that study to the mouth, and even lower, with all the 248 limbs. But they are lower than the intellect, which is the human intellect, the human's advantage. You connect it to something lower than the highest in the person. Das heißt, the limud is an eifon. That means that you study in a way as it is yored mimalosei, that you descend from your greatness, from your advantage, and it penetrates all of your 248 limbs. Is mevatel zayin metzias, that you negate your existence. You don't just your seichel, but it is going through your lower level. Dafka damut ken Toroshu shel HaKadosh Baruch HaBilti Mugbelas. Only then the Torah of Hashem, which is unlimited, by im niklat veren in apnimius, then it can be absorbed in an inner way. Toroshu mishtamer is the Torah is God. So now we explained how, in order to sustain Torah, because it's bligvul, you must have the level of bittul. Question was, but why without bittul, without the why does it mean that there is nechoshim ve'akrabim? Why is this the scorpions? So the Rebbe explains the mistakes will come. If the bittul is not there, then you will come to the wrong conclusions, like the brothers of Vayeshev, without the level of proper bittul. Ches is good verstandig. Based on this, it's very well understood. The Maimer Chazal, the saying of our sages of blessed memory, Mayim ein boy, there may not be water there, but there is snakes and scorpions. Okay, now the Pirish in them, and as we said before, the meaning is as as soon as there's no water, is automatically, without the level of Mayim Bittel, there is going to be opponents, there's going to be snakes and scorpions in that pit. Since the main aspect of Torah is der Farbund mit Neusana Torah, is to tie yourself with the one who gave the Torah, with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, with Hashem. The way you tie yourself to Hashem is through this self-effacement, through the bittul of this one who's studying. The riber is in them nitok in ort, and therefore there is no room in this of something in between. Other by him is not der bittul tzum noitzen haTorah. Either you have that subjugation to the one who gave the Torah to Kodesh Baruch Hu, und demot iser mekaben in sein limud, and then you are directed in your study la mitosah shel Torah. Then he can come to the truth of Torah. This is the rotzin for them, noisen Torah, as is the wishes, the will of the one who gave the Torah. Other, or is as is chaz v'sholem nitod der mayin. But if you're lacking the water, the bittul shebetoira, that self-negation that is required for Torah, that would felt by in the shayches zum noisen haTorah. Then you don't have. You're lacking the connection to the giver of the Torah. You understand the Torah, but you're not connecting to the Neisna Torah. As a Kal V'chomer, from the, as we mentioned earlier, from Pila B'kupa, the Ayil B'kupa, the Machta Canal. The elephant can't go into the whole eye of the needle. I said earlier, you can't, the Mugbal cannot get the Blikvul, not connection to Hashem. Is al derech v'sartem umiyadav avadata. Then it does remain, like we said from the Baal Shem Tov. Soon as you go away, immediately you're serving other gods. As soon as there's no battle, there will be snakes and scorpions. Not only that you don't have a connection to Torah, Chazal, as our sages, blessed memory, say, that the Torah cannot be found in those arrogant of spirit chulu, nor that is their mit oicha, but by being an entity, by being arrogant, by not having the bittul to Hashem, he becomes an opponent to kedusha. K'maimer Chazal, as our sages of blessed memory say, me and him cannot learn in the world. If one person is an arrogant, if he's arrogant, Hashem says, I cannot be with him in the same place in the world. It's as if he worshipped idols. It's all in the Gemara that the Gemara brings down. In the Gemara in Sota, all the negatives from arrogance. And that be vavadatem. It's really... Even by being arrogant, you become avadatem. Not only v'sakta avadatem, but the Gemara says by being a metzias, by being arrogant, you become kofer beikar zavata. Das is euch was the Medrash verteidigt benegei the Ache Yosef Canal. This is also that the Medrash interprets as it relates to Yosef's brother. As nisroiken boire shel Yaakov, ein boy divrei Torah. If Yaakov's boire is emptied, which means there's no Torah, bazehot nit gefelt chas v'sholem that etzem limud Torah. God forbid they weren't lacking the study of Torah. Und they haben gehalten, and they were of the view as alpi din kumt Yosef and Misa that by the law. Yosef deserves death. So but what they were lacking relative to their great level, that inyan von mayim shebetoira, they were lacking water to their bittul, based on their level, as we said before, the melech kivan shekperei ein ezekiv, they needed a high, they were lacking that mayim. Und der Riber is psagdin benegeyet zoynes Yosef nish given bechuven. Their ruling, as far as Yosef's punishment, was not accurate, and they made a mistake. So the Rebbe says that this is all. The whole story led to the Golus, and this is also what happens, especially after Matan Torah. We have that level of connection, which we must learn, take with Bittul. Before Matan Torah, people were learning Torah with their Metzias, but this is an instruction for us how we must learn Torah with the proper level of Bittul. That's the Sipurim. Von unser Parsha wegen den Murois von Yosef mit seinen Brüdern. The story of our Parsha about what happened to Yosef with his brother, seine Hagdome zu Golus Vitzias Mitzrayim. So this is an introduction to the exile and the exodus of Mitzrayim, the whole process. Warum Mechiras Yosef hat geführt zu der Yerida von Yaakov und Bonov the Mitzrayim. Selling Yosef, that led to the descent of Yaakov and Bonov and the son to Mitzrayim. So why did we go down to Mitzrayim, and what we redeemed from Mitzrayim? The whole thing was for Matan Torah. Was their tachlis is their inyan for Matan Torah. Their ultimate goal is for Hashem to give us the Torah. Unazoi is euch benegeya zum inyan for Mayim ein boy avol nechoshim akrab yesh boy. This concept that there is no water but there is snakes was the Torah led into the parsha that the Torah teaches us in this portion. Ados is negeyet zum klolus inyan for Matan Torah. Now this is important to the general concept of Matan Torah. This lesson of what's taking place by the sale of Yosef, that Mayim Einbov Nechoshim Akrabim Yeshboy, is important to the general inyan of Torah, which this leads to. But in the inyan for Mayim Shabbat Torah, because that idea that you need the Mayim, the bittul of Torah, their bittul was fodert sich by learning Torah. That subjugation, which is a requirement by the one who learns, in order to connect mitten, the one who gave the Torah Hashem, by Matan Torah. This has mainly been accomplished when the actual Torah was given. Before, it was not so much a connection with Hashem. It had to do with the Nivra. Der Chelek zwischen dem Limud HaTorah von the Ovis, Far Matan Torah, the difference between the study of Torah of our forefathers before Matan Torah, and der Limud, dem Limud HaTorah von the Bonim noch Matan Torah, and the study of Torah of the children after Matan Torah is Far Matan Torah is the Limud given bekoyach atzmai. Prior to Matan Torah, the study that one studied was in their own, with their own powers, limited to the powers of the individual. But Masi given in Torah, as they feel, you grasp the Torah to so much to the extent, Viful Anivra is bekoyach to banemen, to the extent that a created being has the power to take verstehen and to understand. The Oiftuf of Matan Torah is, what did Matan Torah accomplish? V'nosan lonu es Torah. He gave us the Torah. The Torah, v'zi is sha'ashuoi, v'zi is Torah. He gave us his Torah. He gave us the Torah as it's Hashem's Torah. The platel of the king by himself, meaning the Eibishter's Torah gave it to us, is gegeben geworden durch HaKadosh Baruch Hu, was given through HaKadosh Baruch Hu to jeden Id, to every Yid. Wir verstandig euch vom Psak Din, as understood also from the ruling of the Halacha. As jeder Id und jeden Tag is mechuyev zogen birchas HaTorah, that every Yid, every day needs to say birchas HaTorah. So that means that the Eibishter gives us Torah say. And so now we have a special connection to Torah, and that's why we need even more the level of bittul. The Rebbe also explains that the saying of the Chazal that Moshe would forget Torah in the beginning until Hashem gave it to him as a gift. But what happened to all the generations before? They were learning Torah. How come they didn't forget? Moshe used to forget because he got Torah Say. He got the Eibishter's Torah B'Ligvul. So that's why it's not sustainable without the Eibishter gifting it to him. This is Oich HaBiur. This also explains in the Maimer Chazal, the saying of our sages of blessed memory. To begin with, Moshe was studying Torah, but he would forget it. Until it was given to him as a gift. This seems to be surprising. Even before Matan Torah, people were studying Torah. The Chazal Zogen, as our sages of blessed memory say, quote, Meimehem Shalavisehem, Loi Porsha Yeshiva Mehem, from the days of our forefathers, they never separated from yeshiva. Usis doch pashut, and it's obvious. As they nicht vergessen, was they haben gelernt, they didn't forget what they were studying. Ubefrat, especially as anders is nicht shaykh der limud in an Eifung von yeshiva. Otherwise, it doesn't apply to studying in a way of yeshiva. Yeshiva means settled way that we're learning, and it was sustained. So, how did they learn Torah? And wie kommt es so? How come as Davke noch Matan Torah, that after Matan Torah, Moshe loimed umeshachta, that Moshe was learning and forgetting? Why all of a sudden did he start forgetting? But now we understand, because it's a whole new level in Torah that Moshe got. Nor der Bier in them. The limud far Matan Torah is given in der Beginning von Torah. The study of before Matan Torah was in the level of Torah as it is within the level of Bria. Und der Riber hat sie gekannt, niklat werden in apnimis, and that's why it could be absorbed in an inner. Maschenki bei Matan Torah hat der Eberster Moshe gegeben Torah sei. The Eibusher gave him his Torah. This is in ganzen Hecher von der Bria, which is entirely higher than the creation. A created being with his own powers cannot absorb it. The Riber hat Moshe loimed Torah Meshachah. That's why Moshe would learn Torah and forget it. Al derech vigeret frier, as similar to what we spoken earlier in Sif Zayim, in the minyan for Einu Mishtamer, is that it's not guarded, because we're talking about keeping something blikvul until Achinit Loib Matana. The Eibishter gave him as a gift. The Eibishter, Hashem, was said is Kol Yochel, which is all able. When Ken Mechaber Zayin blikvul and Gvul is able to connect unlimited with limited. He gave his unlimited Torah given to Moshe. Not only he gave it, one who gives it with a good eye. He gave it totally. He gave it as a gift. It doesn't come a gift, you don't pay the value, which means you get a lot more, much more than the person can invest, because it's beyond the person's kochich. So to a limited creator, you can't pay for that. You get it as a gift. The same thing is true as it relates to every Yidden. As Teirosei Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that Hashem's Torah vert by im niklat in apnimius, that it becomes absorbed in an inner mishtameres. While nosan lo nestor, Hashem gifted it to us, Torah. While the Eibishter hat es gegeben b'derech matone, the Eibishter gave it to you in a way of a gift. And yet, the Rebbe brings down, while you get it as a gift, you still got to do something on your own, and you have to have bittul. Well, on the other hand, even though they take the Torah because the power that the Eibishter Neusar Torah moves over the by zayin, the bittul ha'adam, there needs to be by it the person's subjugation. The Torah zobayim zayin mishtameres, in order the Torah should be guarded. Kinal baruch, you need to have, the person needs to have bittul. For bibaldi kavone, since the intention is as ale inyonim nailim. Why does a person have to work? They have to visit him, but the intention is that all great matters. Zolun iden bakumen davke dur chavoida. Yidden should get it specifically through work. Or nitin an oifum for nahamad ichsuf, and not in a way of shameful bread, just handed. But you got to work for it. The river, therefore, musdarodin ton epis mitzidoi. So the person on his own has to do something. Which will make him fit in a gewisser Maß to a certain extent to koilet sein Teiroseh shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to be able to absorb the teaching of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Torah of Hashem. Und das ist durch den Minyan HaBittul, that is through the concept of self-negation, was durch dem geht arois von seinem Metzias. That way he goes out of his own existence on Hagbolas and limitations canal, and he's able to absorb and get the Bligvul, which is in Torah. Yud. Now the Rebbe is connected to Chanukah, but in essence, Chanukah is also the same thing. In a way, the miracle is that it should be beyond logic. Yud. Apikol anal is zoich muvan. Based on all the above, we also understand them kesher zwischen the Maimer Chazal, the connection, the tie, and the saying of the Chazal, Maim ein boi v'chulu, mit an inyan from Chanukah, with the idea of Chanukah. Was euch der Far bringt es the Gemara in der Sugya for Chanukah, because also for this reason, for this connection, the Gemara brings us in the discussion in the Talmud, in the discussion of Chanukah. Says Yedua der Hezber von the Koloshen. It's known the explanation of the precise language in the Nusach von Baal Hamisim, in the version of the prayer that we do in Al Hamisim. It says Malchus Yovan Harshoch, when the evil government of the Greek stood up, Lashkicham Teirasecho, to forget them your Torah, as the Yevonim haben gewollt machen vergessen what they wanted to make forget by Eden. Not the etzem chochma v'sechel ben Torah, not the essence, the idea, the wisdom of Torah. Operation zeiful limud Torah b'chlal, to tear them away from the study of Torah generally. Nor those was Torah is Torah secho, Torah savai. They want to take them away. Shouldn't be the Eibish's Torah. Under farum ze metame given kol hashmanim shebehechel. And that's why they defiled the oils of the Heichel, which means they could have destroyed it, but they were metame. But Shemen is the beginning from Chochmah. Shemen is the level of Chochmah. They were metame Chochmah. They wanted Chochmah to be tame, not to take away Chochmah, but to be a tamedik Chochmah. The Yevonim are masking given. The Yevonim agreed as by Yidden so bleiben der Shemen, that by the Yidden should remain the oil Chochmah v'limud HaTorah, the wisdom and the study of Torah. Nor ze haben gewollt, but what they wanted to, as those soll sein Shemen Tomech HaZoshom, this should be the defiled oil. Those soll nicht sein verbunden mit Kedushas HaTorah. This shouldn't be tied to the sanctity of Torah. Mit Neusen HaTorah, with the one who gave Torah Secho, the Eibishter's Torah, Lashkicham Torah Secho, that's what they wanted. And das is einer from the timing. And this is one of the reasons for was der Eibishter hat gemacht dem Nes, why the Eibishter made this miracle, mizol gefinnen a pach von Shemen Torah, that they should find that jug of clean oil. Why did they need to find it? Of clean oil? We could have benched with tomatic oil. The halacha is Tuma Hutra B'tzibur. Agabas Mitzatem was Tuma Hutra B'tzibur, because Tuma has been permitted if the whole community is Tame. And so they could have used it. They were permitted to light the menorah with defiled oil. But the Eibishter didn't want that, because the whole idea is here. They didn't care about the Shem. They wanted Letame Shem, we should light with Shem and Tome. Because this is the whole idea about the Nitzochen from Chanukah by stating them. Because the victory of Chanukah consists in this, as Zayin Teresecho Shem and Teresecho. Shem and Torah should be clean oil. Similar to what we talked earlier, that there's no water, as Davke, that it automatically, if there is no water, then you get the negativity as Davke durch dem inyan hamayim shebetoira, that it's specifically through this concept of the water of Torah, then bittul zum neusna Torah, that subjugation to the one who gave the Torah. Is that's the way to protect yourself, not to have the opposition, the scorpions and the snakes. Al derech says the minion from Chanukah. The same thing is in the idea of Chanukah. As dafke durch der hadloke von Neres Chanukah, specifically through the lighting of the lamps of Chanukah, shemen tohir, clean oil, vert kalya regla de tarmedoi. As the Gemara says, you light it until the feet of the tarmedoi, that nation, ceases. They no longer in the market. So tarmedoi is also has the meaning of Tarmud Oisios Moiredis. Tarmud has the same letter as rebel. Kalim calls man is felt in the meaning from Shemen Tohir. As long if there's lacking pure oil, Toiresecho is noch als do amokim far merida. There is still room for rebellions. Moiredis, the Tarmudoi. In them Obersten, Visartem Avadatem, you turn away and you serve if you don't have bittul. Dur Hadlokas Hanedis the Chanukah. But when you light the natives of Chanukah, Al Pesach basement of on your door entrance, but in the outside. Mibachutz, you put on Bizdos Balaichdem Chutz to the extent that it illuminates the outside. Vert Oivgiton, that accomplishes their Kalya. You remove, destroy the rigla de tarmadoi, the leg of the meredis, oich min hashuk, also from the market, betachlis hashlemis, in the total wholesomeness, as mizin ganzen mechale dem inyan fun meredis, that you totally destroy the idea of rebellion. When I feel the rigla de tarmadoi, even a foot of the tarmadoi, chinas hayis the tachtoina in the lowest level. Biz made the cheshches hagolus till you light up the darkness of the exile. Me bringt arop the geula hamitis vashlema b'korev mamish. You bring down the true and complete redemption very soon. Mesichas Shabbos Parshas Vayeshev Tovshin Lamed Vov, and Yem Beis the Chag HaShavua is Tovshin Lamed Beis.